Hi there. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast with Lisa Schlossberg. I'm your host, Lisa Schlossberg, a licensed social worker, certified health coach, personal trainer, and yoga instructor. If you, like I have, struggle with your relationship with food, eating, and body image, I am here with this podcast to guide you into healing the relationship you have with yourself through a trauma-informed, holistic, and mind-body-soul approach. Together, we can support you in building a lifestyle of more peace, freedom, safety, and power. Hello again. Welcome back to the Out of the Cave podcast. This is me, Lisa Schlossberg, your host. And today we are back. We are so back. This is chapter 8 of my thoughts and reflections and insight. And I have to say, I am so excited to be here. I am so excited to be here today because we are finally getting into it. This late in the game, this is, I think, a transitional episode, kind of moving from, of course, I have some follow-up thoughts to share, but I think that all of this is moving us into what I have been so excited to talk about all this time. And so I don't know how far we're going to get, but we are definitely moving in that direction. And it's been a few days since I recorded one of these, and I'm just so excited. So anyway, thank you for being here. Welcome back, and buckle up again. All right. So it probably goes without saying at this point that if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, I do think that you should do that, because as I keep using the phrase continuing the conversation. We're continuing the conversation. And so if you haven't listened to the last few, I'm just going to dive right in, and it'll potentially sound like I'm in the middle of something if you haven't listened to those. So do that first. So that said, the first kind of follow-up thought that I had after listening to the last one, I had so many. Also okay. Part of it is I appreciate you, the listener, wherever you are, whoever you are, moving through the emotional journey of me sharing some of my story. And like I said, I will come back and say more about it, but I acknowledge that potentially you didn't know that that's what you were getting into last time, and then we got into it. So thanks for coming and listening. So here's one of the follow-up thoughts that I had about all of what I was saying regarding personality disorders and the DSM and things like that. The first is, I remember I had this thought when I was in grad school for social work, learning about the DSM and using the DSM and how to diagnose and things like that. And I remember thinking, just kind of zooming out, that the DSM, we look at the DSM as like an authority, This is the book that says what is and is not a disorder. And then as I was going through grad school, I remember thinking, well, the people that, like, the DSM comes from a bunch of people who all, in my world, I don't know. In reality, I do not know the ins and outs of like how the DSM is actually created. But in my world, in my mind's eye, what I thought and saw was like a bunch of people sitting around a table being like, okay, what's the criteria for this? And do we want to include that? Because the DSM changes. That's why I said we are now on the DSM-5, but before that there was the 4 and the 3. And so it evolves and it changes, which is now why there are so many different eating disorders that have been identified. Whereas in the previous versions of the DSM, for example, it was like anorexia, binge eating, and bulimia. And there wasn't a lot of variety. And now there's like, I don't want to be wrong about this, but there's quite a few more, okay? And it's not necessarily because people's eating behaviors have changed or because eating disorders are now showing up differently. It's because as time evolved, enough people showed these symptoms that then proved that it needed to be kind of categorized, so much so that now we have an insurance code for it and things like that. And so I'm saying this again because it's like, it's just people who are who are deciding what is and is not quote unquote an addiction. And I remember realizing that at one point and just thinking like, oh, it's not this big book of true and false. This is it. This is not it. It's a lot of the evolution of how things work and opinions and beliefs and creating structure for things that really there is very little structure for. And so that's kind of the context that I was thinking about. But the other thing related to all of this that I was also reflecting on is, let's look at something like multiple personality disorder. So multiple personality disorder is something, again, in the DSM that has a diagnosis, and something that, I think a lot of us in this culture, in my culture, Western American culture, we have been taught and conditioned to believe that things like, for example, hearing voices, let's say, maybe we would call that a symptom of schizophrenia and pathologize that, right? That's not normal. That's not good. That's a problem. And that person should seek help. And in other cultures, this is very much like weight and body image, where it's really, there's a lot of cultural relativism to consider. That is, it's different everywhere. And it's not just capital T truth, right? If someone in a different culture was hearing voices or receiving messages, they would be closer to the top of the social hierarchy, not the bottom of the social hierarchy. And that wouldn't be considered a bad thing or a problematic thing. That would be considered a gift. That would be considered, this is where in other cultures and in other places, these people become like shamans and gurus and healers and helpers of all different kinds. And so I'm just, again, saying this because we grow up with this conditioning that, like, this is the way it is. This is true. And it's like, well, is it? Again, if you were somewhere else, if you were someone else, if you were in a different time and place, you would have a completely different belief system around what is true and what is real. And so, again, I just kind of keep like zooming out to that. And I'm not saying, by the way, I want to be really clear about this too. I'm not saying that like mental illness doesn't exist, or that it's not, some people don't need help, intensive care, medication, things like that. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is, I think we've been a little bit too conditioned to believe that it's this like black and white system when it really isn't. So the reason that I bring up multiple personality disorder is because, again, a lot of us would think that maybe that's something we don't want to associate with, right? Now, though, fast forward a few years to where we are now, and let's talk about internal family systems. The modality of therapy that is kind of blowing up, and I think for a lot of really good reasons. And if you're not familiar with internal family systems, or IFS, this is parts work. There's a part of me that feels this way. There's a part of me that feels that way. There's parts of me. There are parts of us. You've heard me say this probably a million times at this point. And so now it's like, okay, so what we're saying is, as a modality of therapy for our own healing, we have to get in touch with multiple different personalities that we all have. So hold on, right? Like, turns out maybe that it's not as pathological as we thought. And it's not actually as bad or as wrong as we thought. Maybe this is just the way that we all are on a soul level. Okay, just throwing it out there. And part of the reason I'm saying this is because I've worked now with so many people who, start doing this work with me, go through the program, and get really connected to all these different parts of themselves. And what inevitably happens very often is that people will I've seen this look before on their faces of fear, where they look at me and say something like, do I need to check myself into an insane asylum? Is there something wrong with me? Am I going crazy? Is this a psychotic break that I'm having? And it's like, no, it's not. You just were taught to think that if you have conflicting thoughts and feelings, that there's something wrong with you. And the truth is, I think a lot of us are just being human. I think that's just part of the human condition that we have learned to be afraid of. And so I just think it's really interesting to look at kind of like the arc from multiple personality disorder to internal family systems, where now so much healing and growth and inner peace is coming from being willing to acknowledge that we have multiple personalities within us. so that's one reflection. But now, having said all of that, I also, and now potentially I'm being a little bit redundant, but I want to make it really, really clear that when I talk about now, quote unquote, an eating disorder, this is what I wrote in my notes as I was thinking about this the other day. It's not an eating disorder. And every time I say eating disorder, by the way, it's in quotes because fuck that paradigm. It's not a disorder. And the whole point is, it's not an eating disorder. It is a strategy for managing the energetic system that involves food. So if you identify with an eating disorder or disordered eating, it's not a disorder. It is a strategy for managing the energetic mind, body, soul system that involves food. So it's not about the food. It's about the way that you're managing your system that involves food. But we could say the same exact thing for drugs and alcohol and everything else, which is why I keep saying it's not about the substance or the behavior. It's about the function that it serves and the way it makes us feel and the intention behind it. And so I just want to throw that out there if it resonates and is a helpful framework. And that's really the point is, again, like building on what I said, it's about where and when and how and with whom you lose your power. When are you behaving in a way that is not aligned with your own values? When you are disempowered. And so it's not about the eating disorder. It is about the strategy for managing that involves eating. It's not a quote unquote alcohol addiction. It is a strategy for managing that involves alcohol. And so that kind of reframe, I think, is important and can be helpful if you're trying to, really understand how this works. Now, the other thing about that related to quote unquote eating disorders is the clarification that I think also matters. And I will come back and say more about this because of what I've been experiencing personally. That is, it's not about, for me in my experience, it has not been about trying to control my body. It is about, this is a subtle difference, but the nuance is here. It's not about trying to control my body. It's about trying to feel a sense of control in my life in general, control my human experience through my body. So if I am compulsively, let's say, under eating or restricting or over exercising or any of those things, it's not about, and again, I think this is important because even clinicians still will view it from the perspective of you're trying to control your body, when the truth is, well, yeah, kind of on the surface, the tip of the iceberg is I'm controlling my body because it gives me the feeling or the sense of being in control in this otherwise uncontrollable human experience. So again, I think I've made that point, but it just keeps coming up again. So I wanted to say it again. But here's another thing that is the reason this matters to me so much. Is because, like I was saying, there are some quote unquote addictions that are normalized. There are some that are rewarded and praised, and there are some that are looked down upon because we live in a social context. And I think if we take the example of money, for example, again, we use money and then we'll come back to body size. You could have one person that overspends money. So you could have someone who's, let's say, for example, in a tremendous amount of debt because they're overspending. And then you could also have someone who is overworking. And so maybe they have a lot of money. They got a lot of money in the bank. They have a flashy lifestyle. They can buy anything they want because they're an overworker. They're a workaholic. Okay. So on the surface, They look totally different. You have one person who is struggling financially, can't afford anything, living paycheck to paycheck, mountains of debt. And then you have someone else who has tons of money. And on the surface, they look so different. They look like opposites. But the point is that their nervous system could be driving those behaviors and feel exactly the same way. You could have someone who is struggling with money and overspending, and that fear and terror is driving that. But you could also have the person who's overworking, and that person's nervous system, that person's emotional reality could look exactly the same on the inside as the person who has very little money. And the point is, on the surface, they look entirely different. But inside, they are potentially exactly the same. And so the same is true with body size. If you have someone who is overeating versus undereating, if you have someone who's in a bigger body versus a smaller body, we are all out here making snap judgments about what is going on with that person, but we don't know. And so the same way that someone who is a workaholic and doesn't know how to slow down and doesn't feel safe to do less is just always chasing, I'll be happy when, I need more. I need more money. I need more this. I need more that. It's very much the same, because the point is that it's driven by fear. It's not driven by love. It's driven by fear. And so I'm just essentially, I think what I'm trying to do is dismantle a lot of the conditioning that we have been indoctrinated with, and to no fault of our own. This is just how it works, having an animal brain in a social context. But that's the whole point, which is why I ended up losing 150 pounds and feeling so fucking miserable and so sad and lonely and so depressed, because I was told, I was promised that I would lose all this weight and I would be happy. And then I got there and I was so empty and I was so lonely and I was so confused, because that's not actually the way it works. And so I think that all that really matters, because if you are, for example, judging other people, not just by what they look like, but also what they wear and what they own and all sorts of things, stop. Like, gently cut that shit out, because the truth is, this is how it works. And you don't know, you can never see what is going on the nervous system level of another individual, right? So if you're looking down on one person for their behavior and looking up to another person because of what they have and the way they behave and the way they show up, just remember that you really don't know the full story about what's actually going on there. And this is why we need to be seeing each other and ourselves first as human beings, not as bodies, not as objects, not as incomes, not as anything on the surface, because that goes back into the paradigm of objectification, of judgment, of us versus them. And that is just not the truth of it. We are all human beings at the end of the day. So again, it looks very different, but this is also true, by the way, for, I think I'm making this point, overeating and undereating. Because I had a client once who, this was a very powerful session that we had together, where we were talking about the energy. Okay, if you are someone who struggles with disordered eating, pay attention to this. Think about how this might be true for you. We're describing the energy of overeating or binging in this example. And then we were also describing the energy of going back on a diet, right? So kind of, again, building on what I was saying last time, where we like get to a certain point and then quote unquote rein it in, or like reel it in. And the reason it was a very enlightening conversation was because through the questioning and, you know, I'm going to say great coaching, what we became aware, or what he was able to become aware of, is that the energy is exactly the same. So the experience, or the manifestation of it is very different, right? One is binging, overeating to the point of fullness, to the point of pain and discomfort. But think about the energy of that. Well, in this example, fast, chaotic, out of control, frenetic, jittery, right? That's the energy of the experience. Okay, well, now we swing the pendulum over to the other side. And how does it feel when you are starting another diet? And it's like excited, like that same kind of like fast energy. And in the body, those can feel very much exactly the same. And so once again, the point is, it's not about what's happening on the surface. It's not about the behavior. Because if these are the ways that we keep ourselves perpetuating a physiology that feels like safety and comfort and familiarity to the mind-body system, we're going to keep finding ways to do that. And so you might think that you're going from binging to dieting to binging to dieting, and that it's all, very different. But the truth is that the energy of it, if your nervous system feels the same on both sides of the spectrum, that's exactly part of the reason that that's happening. So once again, you don't know. You just don't know what is happening for people, how they feel about their behaviors, why they're engaging in what they're engaging in. And that's why I think it's so, I had someone recently say something about, like, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with someone who makes a lot of money, period. I'm not. What I am impressed with is someone who makes a lot of money and has fantastic work-life balance, that has enough time to spend with their family, that feels fulfilled in the work that they're doing, that has time and space for hobbies and interests and passions. That is very impressive to me. If you can balance all of that, that's impressive. I want to know about that person. But it's the exact same when it comes to body and weight, right? I'm not impressed with weight loss. I am so wholeheartedly not impressed with weight loss, because if you, again, are losing weight, but you're sacrificing your health and your social life and your well-being and your mental health, been there, done that, that is not impressive to me. We all know how to do that, I think. But if I know someone, and I will insert this fact right now. The other day I thought to myself, I am so inspired by me. I am so inspired by myself and what I've done. And very recently too, because if I see weight loss, healthy, sustainable, gradual weight loss, when you, at the same time that you are cutting fat off your body, you also are hanging out with your friends, eating dessert, drinking a cocktail, living your life. If you are out there living, feeling good and healthy and aligned, that is impressive. That is impressive. But it's not impressive because of the thing, right? It's impressive because of the context in which the thing exists. And that is what we just, again, are missing if we are busy out here objectifying ourselves and other people. And then I guess the last thing that I'll say about this idea is I just really think about, for what it's worth, I don't know how it would be possible to have an animal brain, so the part of the brain that we share literally with a lizard that is designed to keep us safe and protected and make sure that we are, moving toward survival and not danger. I don't know how it's possible that we can have an animal brain and live in a social context as a spiritual being having a physical experience and not be anxious. Like, how would it even be possible to have the expectation that we're going to have the animal brain that thinks everything is a matter of life or death in a social context, and that we're not going to be anxious some of the time? Like, we're designed to be anxious. I'm not even going to say anxious. We are designed. The system has been designed for us to be sensitive, and probably more sensitive than we were taught or than we want to be. But I just, in the name of like normalizing the human experience and taking it out of these boxes and labels and diagnoses, it's like you have an animal brain in a social context. If you feel anxious, if you feel scared, if you feel preoccupied and worried and concerned with all sorts of things, I think it's okay for us to say, that's not a disorder. That's just being a human, having a human experience. And again, this is not to say anxiety disorders are not real. This is not to say that depression does not need to be treated. This is not to say any of that. And for a lot of the people that I work with, it shows up in a way where it's just not that bad, right? So it's like a lot of the people in this world, in my community that I've been fortunate enough to support and work with, maybe they don't have a diagnosis of anxiety, but then there's always this wondering about, like, why do I feel so anxious? Because you have an animal brain. It's okay. It's okay. Nothing is wrong with you. That's what I mean over and over again. It's not your fault. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just juggling a lot by way of being human. And that's not your fault. So that's the last thing I wanted to say about that. Okay. Having said all of that, here's another thing that's been floating around in my mind the last few days. But this is where we actually start to move in the direction of a lot of the things that I've been wanting to tell you. All right, so let's start with, I've heard many times, and some of you may have heard me say this at some point, but I've heard this quote, we accept the love we think we deserve. We accept the love we think we deserve. And you know what? As always, if that feels true for you, take it and run with it. That can be true for you. And that doesn't feel true for me. It doesn't resonate with me. And I have, for me, what feels like a more accurate depiction of a similar sentiment. So that's what I want to share with you and break it down. I don't think, and again, I'm not saying this is true for everybody. I'm saying that this is true for people like me for whom it feels true. Okay? So I don't think that it is always we accept the love we think we deserve. I think that it is actually we accept the love we feel safe to receive. I think that it is more so we accept the love we feel safe to receive. Okay. Now, I'm going to break it down. Here's the point. If you have been so deeply conditioned by diet culture, hustle culture, your mother, all the ways that we get conditioned, okay, micro, meso, macro, on all the levels, if you have internalized the belief system that you are a body, so you're objectifying yourself as a body, and therefore you are ignoring your emotional needs. So using the example again of, if I look at my own weight loss, it was like suppress, deny, reject, push down, stuff down my feelings, my body, ignore, disconnect, and dissociate. And by doing that, I was able to, quote unquote, like achieve the big success of weight loss. But that's an example of being so conditioned to see myself as a body that I was pushing down and ignoring everything else. Okay. So a lot of us, again, become like habituated to this lifestyle of pushing down what is true, what is authentic, what is honest. And we live thinking of ourselves as physical, like strictly physical. And so the point is that if we are habituated to essentially a lifestyle that suggests my feelings don't matter. I'm not looking at my feelings. I'm not thinking about my feelings. I'm not feeling my feelings. I'm not expressing my feelings. I'm not getting support for my feelings. If we're living in that kind of disconnection, and that's what we've become, that's what's become familiar to us, then what that means is that that's what feels safe. Okay. So we talked about this a few episodes ago. That's like the foundation is then it becomes feeling, because we have an animal brain, it becomes this dichotomy almost of, if I suppress and ignore my needs, then I'm safe because that's what I've learned to do. And it's kept me alive this long, right? And so the alternative to that is learning how to honor my body and honor my needs and actually receive care from myself self-compassion, self-love, right? That's the alternative. But if your brain thinks that you not doing that is what keeps you safe, then what it's going to think as a byproduct is that by you doing that, you will be unsafe, or you will be potentially unsafe, and your animal brain designed to save your life and keep you surviving is not willing to take that risk. And so it's like on one side we have objectifying ourselves, but with that becomes also judging ourselves and critiquing ourselves. And so the alternative is honoring the body, taking care of ourselves, reparenting, self-compassion, self-love. And what I'm saying to you is these things that we want, like self-compassion and self-love, can feel so threatening and scary because they're so unfamiliar. So we talked about this, a few episodes ago, and I'm breaking down self-compassion, but I think it's really important because I don't think that we accept the love we think we deserve. I think we accept the love that we feel safe to receive. And if we have never received love and connection and care and support, I don't believe that we all don't feel worthy. I don't believe that we don't feel like we deserve it. I feel a lot of the time like we just don't feel safe to receive it because it is so different than what we've experienced before. So I'm adding this here because if you are someone that wants to live intuitively and eat intuitively, you also have to know that it actually needs to feel safe for your system to do that. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do that and how to integrate all of this. But there's something that really, really doesn't sit right with me about the cultural narrative that it feels we've collectively bought into, that like deep down there's you like deep down you really don't feel worthy, deep down you really feel unlovable, and deep down you really hate yourself, and you're just like full of self-loathing. Like I don't know, man, this is a belief. You don't have to share it, but I really don't believe that. I really don't believe that. I think that there are definitely times where I feel unworthy. There are definitely times where I am fearful that I'm unworthy of love. Those things come up, those beliefs, those narratives, that story, fine, that comes up. But I genuinely think that the truth is, at the core of all of us, we are just scared. I think we're scared. I don't think that we believe that we are terrible, horrible things, beings, creatures. I think we've been taught to believe that, but that's not our core belief. That's our internalized belief. You didn't come out of the womb thinking that you were unworthy. And those beliefs, yes, were formed as your life went on and you took in these messages. But I think if it can be very helpful for me along the healing journey to say, it doesn't feel safe for me to receive this kind of love yet. Not, I don't feel worthy of this kind of love. Because at least, again, for me, there have been a lot of times in my life where I'm like, no, I feel worthy of it. Like I feel like I deserve it, but it makes me so fucking uncomfortable. Like it's really challenging, and it's such a growth edge to let myself like really take it in. And again, there have been times where I also will feel unworthy of receiving something. But again, it doesn't feel like the core of me. It feels like unworthiness shows up as almost like masking of this I just don't feel safe feeling, rather than it being the actual root. So I hope that makes sense. But in this context, the reason that this matters and is important is because it's not always about examining and exploring and changing the belief systems, right? Like if you have this experience of I feel unworthy or I am scared that I am unlovable, I think a lot of the time it becomes about, change the belief system. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know in this scenario when it comes to these quote unquote core beliefs. Again, I don't even think it's helpful to call them core beliefs, but whatever. I don't think it's helpful to think about how do we change the belief system. This is where, for me, it becomes more about behavior change. This is where it really becomes about you being willing to say, I don't feel worthy of this, and I'm willing to do it anyway. Or I don't feel worthy of this kind of, love and compassion from someone else. And there have been times, okay, now there's just so many things I want to say. There have been times in my life where other people will be really generous or kind, and I will feel like I am not worthy of, like, why are they being so nice to me? Or like, why are they offering this to me? Why are they offering to help me? Why? And it comes from, again, not in my experience, I don't feel worthy of it. That's like the feeling. But underneath that is like, it just feels so unfamiliar that it's like, it feels hard to trust it. There must be some ulterior motive behind it. Or is this some sort of like manipulation? Or are they expecting something from me? Like, because that's what it has felt like in the past, right? It's transactional. If someone's going to help me or be kind to me, then, what's it for? Or like, what do they want? And so again, there are these moments where with other people, it'll show up as I feel unworthy. But the same is true. This is what I'm trying to get to, is that the same is true in our internal relationship with ourself, where it feels like when you start to reparent yourself and really take on the responsibility to just ultimately take care of yourself, and you are giving yourself love and giving yourself care and treating yourself with respect, very, very often people will say, I don't feel worthy of that. And whether it is that you don't feel worthy of it, or that it's just so unfamiliar because that's so not what you're used to doing, it really doesn't matter either way. What it comes down to for me is it doesn't matter if you feel worthy of it or not. It's about doing it. This is where, like I know Nicole Sachs has said, life is a behavior modification program. This is where it's a behavior modification program. You don't have to feel worthy of it. You just have to be willing to receive it. And you don't have to feel comfortable receiving it. You just have to be willing to receive it, which is back to radical acceptance. You don't have to feel comfortable with it. You just have to do it. And so I remember in certain relationships along the way over the last few years, as I have been healing and experiencing this, I remember one time specifically where I realized that someone was being so caring and kind to me. And I remember I kept saying, I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why. And then the universe, this just like message dropped in that was literally, you don't need to know why. You just need to trust it. This is the practice of trust. This is the practice of faith. And so when you are trying to learn how to take care of yourself and reparent yourself, some of the time it is about saying, I don't feel worthy of it, but I'm going to act as if I did feel worthy of it. I don't feel comfortable giving myself this kind of love and care and respect, and that's okay, but I'm willing to act as if this is something that feels comfortable to me. I'm willing to act as if I was someone that believed I was worthy. And what this very really, in a more granular sense, breaks down to is you choosing a behavior that actually honors you and is rooted in self-love. And this could be, let's use the example of eating when you're hungry. Eating when you're hungry. And so if you are used to and habituated to living a lifestyle of controlling your body, and, for example, waiting until you are absolutely ravenous before you feed yourself, what it might look like to treat yourself with more love and more intention and more care would be to feed yourself when you start getting hungry. And the point is, there might be this block or obstacle of, but I don't feel worthy of that. I don't feel like I've earned it yet. I don't feel like I've done enough yet. I don't feel worthy of feeding myself until I'm absolutely ravenous. And that's where don't don't get distracted trying to change the belief system and get yourself to feel worthy. The point is, you just have to do the thing. You have to feed yourself when you're starting to feel hungry, in this example, knowing that you will not feel worthy of it. That's okay. That's okay. But again, it's not that we don't accept that we accept the love we think we deserve. It's that we accept the love that we feel safe to receive. You just don't feel safe to do that yet because you haven't been doing that. That's not the way that you have been treating yourself. That's not the way that you've been living. So how could you expect yourself to quote unquote feel worthy of it? How could you expect yourself to feel safe with it when it's so different than the way that you've been operating? And so this is where it's like, if we want to talk about, integration of behavior change, if at the root of so much of what gets in the way is I don't feel worthy, so don't feel worthy. Do it anyway. This is the exact kind of place where it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. You don't feel worthy? Okay, cool. Do it anyway. Act as if you did. Act as if you were someone that believed in yourself. Act as if you were someone that loved yourself, took care of yourself, respected yourself. You just try it on. You just embody it. And this is the other thing I always say. It's not fake it till you make it. It's embody it until you habituate to it. You've got to get, we have a mind-body system. We have a nervous system. We have a physiology that we got to get on board and that we're traveling with. We're traveling through the healing journey with this nervous system, whether we like it or not. And so some of the time it's about just being willing to say, I'm going to do the thing as if. I'm going to live as if I believed in myself. I'm going to behave as though I loved myself. And the kind of metaphor that I always like to now when I'm teaching this or talking about this is like, think about it like you're trying on like a pair of pants. So the way that when you're shopping for clothes and you're putting on a new outfit, like you're going into the fitting room because you want to try it on. You want to see if it works. You want to see how it feels. That's how I think about this, where it's like, okay, I don't feel worthy. Okay, well, just try on that you do feel worthy. Try on the energy of, or the behavior of someone that does, and just see how it feels. Just see how it feels. And, go out there and do the thing. Or, in this, again, example, feed yourself when your body starts getting hungry. Just try it on. Just do it. And then what I think is the other most important thing about this is you have to know and expect that as you start doing this, you will likely experience what I would call withdrawal. You will likely experience withdrawal because if what you're used to doing is any behavior or any way of operating that you have, again, created this kind of lifestyle around, if this is one of the structures that you have that keeps you feeling safe or in control or whatever it is, managing, such as not eating until you are totally ravenous, if you do something different, and again, you fake it till you make it, but you embody it until you habituate to it, you just do the thing. You doing a thing that is different will likely, inevitably, bring up fear. Because again, you have an animal brain that says, I don't know, this is different, this is different, this is different. I want to go back. I want to go back into the comfort zone. I want to go back where I know things are familiar. I want to go back where I feel safe. You have to know that that's going to happen. That's going to happen, and that's okay. That's exactly what is supposed to happen. So instead of, I'm saying all of this because instead of you hearing some of what's coming next and being like, well, I don't feel worthy. Fine. You don't have to feel worthy. You just have to do it anyway. And if there's, parts that are like, well, it feels really uncomfortable. It feels really threatening. It feels really, whatever it feels scary. Fine. Okay. This is where you feel the fear. You do it anyway. And hopefully you can see kind of, again, I'm doing, again, a thing with my hands that you can't see, like the arc from the beginning of our life when we start getting disconnected from ourselves on a soul level, from our bodies, because our body is our home in which the soul lives. That's kind of the first part of the arc, is this disconnection. And so if what we want is to work back toward connection, because we have an animal brain and a nervous system and all the things, we have to know that making our way back to wholeness, to love, to compassion, to inner peace, intuitive living, intuitive eating, it's an uncomfortable journey in some ways, not all the time. But when you choose to behave differently than the way that you've been doing it, you're breaking out of old wiring, and that can be really uncomfortable. But the whole point is you're tolerating discomfort for the sake of your own well-being, for the sake of you arriving on the other side of that, where then, here's the really good news, self-love, self-compassion, because of neuroplasticity, literally, which is your brain's ability to change and rewire itself. Because neuroplasticity is a real thing, then eventually you do this consistently over and over again, just like a meditation. It becomes your new norm. You embody it until you habituate to it. And then later on, after this becomes your new lifestyle, it's like, oh, self-love, like self-love becomes so much more accessible that it's now the front line. Self-loathing is like an old habit. It's not going anywhere, but it becomes like a mosquito that just flies around and you get to, like, you know, swat it away. And it becomes more like that. And so again, I just want to be really clear about like how this stuff works. You make a behavior change because you decide to, not because you feel worthy of it, but because you're committed, because you want to live a life where self-love is how you live. And you can do that, but you got to work for it. You have to work for it. And if, unfortunately, we have been so conditioned to be so disconnected from ourselves, the reconnecting requires your conscious, intentional effort. It's not going to happen by itself, but that's kind of the whole point of all of this. Okay. Now, I'm also going to add, this is like a little bit of a sidebar, but it came up recently in my last group, and it has come up actually in many of the group cohorts that I've run. And so I just want to give it a voice here. So what I'm talking about here is essentially unconditional love and connecting, let's say connecting to the source of unconditional love. That is, you don't need to earn love. You don't need to be good enough for love. You don't need to do anything. Just by way of being a human, you are worthy of receiving love. And for some people, that in itself, like if you told me, and I remember feeling this way years ago, I would hear and see, you know, that people would imply that just because you're a human, you are worthy of love. And I'd always be like, well, are you though? And so I'm saying that because, like, if you're one of those people who's like, I don't know if that lands, be where you are. You know, that's totally okay, because I really, really was there. And now I have arrived at a place because I've done so much of what I'm literally telling you to do or inviting you to do. Now I really am at a point where I'm like, oh, spiritual being, having a human experience, spirit, source, God, love. It's love, love. Okay. Love is all of it. Love is everything. And without getting too deep into that, the point that I want to make here is actually about religious conditioning. I've talked about a lot of different kinds of conditioning: diet culture conditioning, anti-diet culture conditioning, hustle culture conditioning, all sorts of kinds of patriarchal, consumerist culture, capitalist conditioning. We've been conditioned in so many ways. Okay. I haven't brought up religious conditioning, really. And this, again, is something that's come up many times. And what I want to say about, I'm not going to speak to any specific religion or any specific kind of conditioning around it, but I mostly am saying this because, A, I want to include it in the discourse in general, And B, partially also to, of course, validate anyone's experience around this, where potentially some of what I'm saying here is counter to your own religious upbringing or your own religious beliefs or your own religious conditioning. And that's not about good or bad or right or wrong or any of it. But I want to, again, kind of just shine the light on that, because when I suggest that you are unconditionally, so under every condition, under all conditions, no matter what you do, no matter how you behave, you are worthy of love. Sometimes that, again, kind of challenges the way that people have been taught to think religiously. Sometimes religious doctrine suggests that in order for you to be loved, you have to behave this way. You have to follow these rules. You have to eat like this. You have to dress like this. You have to be like this. And if you follow these rules, then you will be worthy of love. And then you will be safe. And that's worth noting and paying attention to in this conversation, because again, it's different for everyone, but it feels important, because I know that all different kinds of religions have brought this up in my work with people, to the point where sometimes people will do this work and then really question their religious beliefs or their religious upbringing or things like that, their relationship with religion in general, which I think is also another, again, very valid reason that people want to stay away from this. And so again, I'm just voicing it, because as I'm talking about embodying unconditional love, some of you have been taught to not do that. Like, very decidedly do not do that, because then, potentially there will be some negative consequences in your paradigm, let's say. So I want to acknowledge that. And also, I don't know if I want to even say this, but but part of me does. I guess there's also a part of me that just feels sad and sorry for anyone whose God only loves and accepts them conditionally. If you have been taught through religion that love is only conditional rather than unconditional, I think that has everything to do with your disordered eating. And that's a big statement, but I really mean that. I really mean that, because a lot of it is we're seeking love. Yeah, we're seeking safety, but we're seeking safety through love, seeking love, feeling loved. So whether that's from other people or for ourselves, from ourselves, with ourselves, in ourselves, that deserves to be looked at. So again, just bringing it back full circle here, if that resonates with you or if that's been your experience, I don't think it really works or captures the entire complexity of all of it to say I don't feel worthy of love, but more so that it feels unsafe because it is, again, just so foreign. Okay, now, having said all of that, this is what I was really excited about, because now we're getting into it. How do we do it? How do we do it? How do we actually start to make changes? So we've talked about tender self-compassion, accepting ourselves to alleviate suffering. We have talked about fierce self-compassion, taking action to alleviate suffering. And so all of this, those are the first few episodes. Now we're in chapter 8. And now we can say, all right, so how do we do this? As a spiritual being having a physical experience with an animal brain, a social context, surviving on food, we want to make changes, and we want to do it in a way that is sustainable. So we want to practice things like saying no, fierceness, but maintaining connection, tenderness. We want integration, and we want balance. And this is what the next few episodes are going to be about. We have finally arrived. So how do we do it? How do we do it? Well, thank you for asking. The answer is, as you may have heard me say so many times, baby steps. Baby steps. Baby, 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 fetus steps. I want to claim that. I want to own that. Fetus steps. That is what we are doing. That's how we do it. Because, as I was just saying, we have to honor the nervous system. You have a mind-body system, whether you like it or not. You have an animal brain, whether you like it or not. You are likely more sensitive than is convenient for your ideal timeline. And that's just the way of it. We have to honor the nervous system. So the reason I'm saying baby steps, fetus steps, I'm calling them fetus steps from this point on, is because we have to understand the way it works. Okay. So again, I'm looking at a slide that I have included in my coaching curriculum that you cannot see. So I'm going to do my best to tell you what to envision. So first, okay, we have the comfort zone. In the comfort zones, there's a little circle. Inside the circle, it says comfort zone. And this is where we feel safe, we feel in control, and we feel content. This is where we're comfortable. Okay. Now, that's like a smaller circle. Now the comfort zone circle is within a larger circle. And the larger circle is the learning zone. So now we're like outside of the comfort zone. In the learning zone is where we have growth, problem solving, developing new skills, and we feel engaged. So we're learning. Okay, now that circle is within an even bigger circle. And the bigger circle, which is now the furthest away from the comfort zone, is the danger zone. And in the danger zone, we have poor decision-making ability, panic, fight or flight response, anxiety, poor performance, exhaustion. We could also put here the freeze response. So it's fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, or whatever. These are the stress responses. The survival mechanisms kick in because now you're in the danger zone. And the reason, by the way, that we have poor decision-making ability in the danger zone is because when the amygdala is activated, we lose access to the prefrontal cortex, which is where our good decision-making lies in the brain. So this is how it works. So the point is, when you're in your comfort zone, you're in your comfort zone. And there's nothing wrong with being in a comfort zone, but you're not learning very much, and you're not growing, and you're not evolving, and you're not doing anything new. You're not developing skills. You're not growing. And that, again, this is not good or bad. That's just the way of it. But then you get out of your comfort zone. Here's the important thing. In order for you to grow and evolve and develop skills and be engaged and solve problems and all of the things, that requires leaving the comfort zone. So we have to do something different. We have to get out of our comfort, which again, think about it. It's called the comfort zone. So if you leave the comfort zone, you will necessarily be uncomfortable. That's how it works. That is exactly how it's supposed to work. And so you cannot have growth and evolution and problem solving and new skills if you're staying in the comfort zone. That's not how it works. Then, though, if we go too far, if we take too big of a step, if we bite off more than we can chew sustainably, if we put ourselves in a position that is now too far away from the comfort zone, now we've surpassed the learning zone and we're in the danger zone. So now we're activating our own stress response. We can't make good decisions. We can't see clearly because we think, or our brain thinks, that we're running from a predator. So when I say fetus steps, that's why. Because a lot of you guys are very much like me. And we've talked about the discipline of doing less, right? This is why we need to practice the discipline of doing less. Because if you are someone that is, again, high achieving, high performing, high functioning, you very likely take yourself from the comfort zone to the danger zone. And you go too far and you do too much. And then it's not sustainable and you don't feel good. Or maybe you're doing it, but you're white knuckling your way through it. And you feel on the inside, again, back to maybe it looks really good, but on the inside, you feel like you're fighting for your fucking life just to survive. The reason for that is because you're in the danger zone. You're not in the learning zone. You surpass the learning zone. You threw yourself into the deep end of the pool. And that is not sustainable, and it's also not going to feel good. So we need baby steps. The visual that I've had very often for myself is, and I've had my inner child explain this to me, show me this. Like what you did, Lisa, as the parent, unknowingly, not intentionally, was throw myself into the deep end and just be like, you'll figure out how to swim, right? And that feels really scary. And that is not loving. That is not loving. That is the danger zone. And so the visual, again, that I have seen in my own head is like going from the deep end and like walking around the side of the pool and going to the little stairs in the shallow end and like one step at a time. And then you can move your way safely, slowly, gradually into the deep end of the pool. And so it's not about the deep end being too deep or too far or too big or too hard or too scary. Nope, that's not the problem. We can learn how to swim, but can we learn how to swim gently, gradually, slowly, a little bit at a time? Okay, because this is where you keep your nervous system feeling safe and you get to achieve the goal at the same time. So you see, potentially you can see how all of this is leading to a larger conversation about intentional weight loss in a way that feels safe and healthy. Now, the other thing that I have to say about this that is so, so important is that when we practice the discipline of doing less, now, especially if you are someone like me who, A+ gold star student, you like throwing yourself into the deep end of everything you do and forgetting about your nervous system and how unsafe and scared you feel, please hear me when I say this. When you practice the discipline of doing less, when you walk yourself over to the shallow end of the pool and you go step by step by step, first of all, if again, you're anything like me, even to this day, when I envision that or see that, there's a part of me that's like, ugh, like that grief. It's grief. That's like, I want to just be able to throw myself into the deep end. And it's like, and it's not even, by the way, it's not even, I just want to be able to throw myself into the deep end. It's, I wish that I could throw myself into the deep end and feel safe doing that. The same way that I wish I could be in fight or flight, checking all the things off my list and feel at peace. And it's like, well, that's just grief about how it is, what it is. That's just, you can't have that. So there is still a part of me, and I want to validate that in myself so I can validate it in you. That is, sometimes you walk yourself over to the shallow end of the pool, so to speak, and you commit to going one step at a time, not because you feel like it, not because you want to, but because you're committed to not throwing yourself into the deep end and ultimately throwing yourself under the bus and making yourself feel so shitty. So, okay. No. But this is the part I really want you to hear. When you practice the discipline of doing less, what will come up, likely, is withdrawal for the over-functioning part of you. The way of being that you know how to operate in, so your, again, just kind of, I want to use the word like habituation, like your habit of throwing yourself into the deep end, of doing too much, of going straight into the danger zone. And what this often looks like, by the way, is you go from, never working out to like all of a sudden running every single day. And then you wonder why it sucks and it's unsustainable and you get injured. And like, this is why you're throwing yourself into the deep end. But the same is true around food and eating, where it's like you start the diet on Monday and it's like, that's to your system, if you're telling the truth very often, can feel like the danger zone. That like you've committed to doing this thing that is way far away from your current reality. So how in the world, again, how could that be sustainable? It's in the danger zone. It's so far away. So the point is that when you choose to honor yourself and do less, you will likely feel withdrawal. Now, that withdrawal, this is my language, that works for me. But that withdrawal very often shows up as the emotional discomfort of, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I need to do more. Those are usually the stories that come up. Oh, right, it's not good enough. I'm not good enough. I need to do more. And here's the most important thing that I can say about all of this, and then we're going to get so much deeper into it. That is, if you feel, or when, because I think it's inevitable, when you feel like you are not doing enough, the answer is not to do more. The answer is to sit in the emotional experience of not doing enough. Feeling like you're not doing enough. Okay. So imagine, right? Here's how this conversation could go. If you say to me, well, I want to start working out, so I'm going to work out 5 days next week. And I'm like, okay, well, how many are you doing right now? None. Okay. 5 might be too much. That might be the danger zone. If you're used to doing none right now, what if you start with like 1 or 2? Let's reel it in and go, right? Let's take it into the learning zone where you're doing less. And very often the response will be, but I feel like I'm not doing enough. But I feel like I should be doing more. And usually, if you're not working with someone to help you become aware of these things, usually what happens is you won't even consider doing 1 day or 2 days at the gym. You go immediately from 0 to 5 because, again, that's what you're used to. That's how you've been conditioned. That's how you operate. Sometimes it's invisible. The learning zone is actually invisible, so you don't even know that it's there. All you know is that you're used to going from 0 to 5 days a week, and then it's unsustainable, and then you get injured, and then it never works out. That's all you know. That's all you see, right? And so, again, plug for coaching, because this is why it can be so helpful. Because if someone says to me, then I feel like I'm not doing enough. Okay, pause. The answer to feeling like you're not doing enough is not to do more. The answer, or this quote unquote solution, is to sit in the feeling of what that's like for you. So if you resonate with this and it's like, well, 1 day at the gym, 2 days at the gym, that's not enough. I need to do more. What I would say is very often, when someone says, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I need to do more. I feel like now we're saying things, but we've moved away from expressing the emotional experience of it. Not I feel like, what do you feel? And this is where you could literally take out the feelings wheel and look. And this is usually where most people will say, I feel inadequate, right? If I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I am not enough. What that is in an emotion is inadequate. I feel inadequate, or I feel insecure, both of which live on the fear side of the feelings wheel. So ultimately what we're saying is, I feel scared. I feel scared. It's not that I feel unworthy. It's not that I feel unlovable. And maybe, again, if those words resonate for you, take it. That's your story. But ultimately, all we're saying here is, I feel scared. I feel like the only way for me to do this is to go from 0 to 5 days. And if I have to do 1 or 2, then it's going to bring up all this fear. It's going to bring up fear that I'm inadequate. It's bringing up the fear of insecurity. It's bringing up the fear that I should do more, or that I need to do more, or that this isn't enough. It's bringing up scarcity and lack and all the things that, again, we've just been conditioned to kind of carry. But the point is, you going from 0 days to 5 days and then having that be unsustainable every single time. How many times do you need to run that experiment before you are willing to say, I feel like I should do more, or I feel like I need to do more, or I feel like I'm not doing enough, and this is uncomfortable. This is really emotionally uncomfortable. And this is where you can say to yourself, this is just energy. It doesn't make it less scary, but it is energy, and it's very normal that if the way that you have learned to operate and function is always do more, do more, do more, and so now you have to practice the discipline of doing less, you will feel that withdrawal. You will feel the anxiety and the fear. And so this is where you can say, okay, this is energy moving through my body. It might feel like a threat, and it isn't one. This is exactly the moment of saying, this is uncomfortable, this is not unsafe. And this is the moment that you get to insert the practice of tender self-compassion. That is, this is a moment of suffering. This is hard. This is hard. This feels uncomfortable. This feels really scary. Ouch. This hurts. I'm sitting with this part of me that feels unworthy. I'm sitting with a part of me that feels inadequate and insecure. And here's how you do this. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to get it to go away. Your job, your role, your opportunity in this is to say, I see you and I hear you. And I know that sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough. And that can be really hard. And I know sometimes you feel insecure. I felt that way too. That's okay. Turns out it's part of being human. You're not doing anything wrong. You definitely don't need to do more. This is just part of what it is sometimes. And this is like the example of how you start to practice that. And you can let the energy of fear move through your body, move through you and be expressed. So you can ultimately, again, take your power back and do what you want with it. Because if your life is being driven by these unconscious, subconscious belief systems you have about how unworthy and insecure you are or inadequate you are, and you're always needing to do more and chase more and receive more and fill the void, this is how you start to change things. You have to actually take an action, right? So fierce self-compassion, take action to alleviate suffering, but make that action aligned action that is a baby step, a fetus step, tiny, that you know is going to be manageable. You look for low-hanging fruit when you do this stuff. The things that you know you can commit to, not the things that you're necessarily feel comfortable with, or not the things you're going to be, super psyched about, but things that you can commit to doing. And then when you show up to do it, so you're taking action, you're practicing fierce self-compassion, but then along the way, when there are parts of you that are like, I feel like I need to do more, I feel inadequate, I feel insecure, that's where you meet yourself with tender self-compassion. That is, I know what that's like. And that can be really uncomfortable, and that can be even really painful sometimes. Nothing to change, nothing to fix, nothing to solve, just part of the human experience that you feel like you're not enough. And then what I would say to you is, where do you feel that? Where do you feel that in your body? Sometimes it's tears immediately. Sometimes it's panic. For me personally, sometimes it shows up in different ways, but that's where I get to say to myself, it's okay that you're feeling this way. This isn't your fault. You're not doing anything wrong. And you definitely don't need to do more. What we need to do is take tiny little baby steps to make sustainable changes in the outer, physical dimension. And then we also need to be pairing it with this tender self-compassion of saying, I don't feel like it's good enough. I don't feel like I'm good enough. And ultimately what I'm saying to you is, when you feel like you're not good enough, don't try to make yourself feel good enough. When you feel inadequate, don't try to get yourself to feel adequate. This is the biggest thing that we are missing when it comes to this kind of work. When you feel insecure, don't try to get yourself to feel confident. When you feel inadequate, don't try to get yourself to feel competent and adequate. When you feel inadequate, feel inadequate. When you feel insecure. These are feeling states. They're emotions. It's energy. It can't kill you. It's not even going to stick around for that long. Necessarily, if you're not replaying it in your head over and over again. But that's the thing, is we just have to know, like, it's okay. It's the reason that inadequacy and insecurity are on the feelings wheel is because they're feelings. We're supposed to be feeling these things, especially when you have so much conditioning that says you're not good enough. You're going to feel that way sometimes. Don't try to get yourself to not feel it. Okay? But again, just because you are accepting yourself to alleviate suffering and saying, you know what, I do sometimes feel inadequate. I do feel insecure. I don't need to do anything about that in the moment. I can allow this feeling. It also doesn't mean that you are completely complacent. It doesn't mean that you are not also taking baby steps, moving in the direction you want to move in. You can have both, but you need to do it. I want to say you need to do it this way. Like, you need to be infusing this process of moving forward with love and compassion if you want it to feel good and you want it to be sustainable. So I'm going to close this out with an example. I'm going to give you another concrete example because I had this conversation like literally yesterday or 2 days ago. And as I was saying it, I was like, this is honestly really good advice that I'm giving this person. And this is the kind of stuff that I think I'm giving really good advice. And as I'm hearing it come out of my mouth, I'm like, this is the shit no one wants to hear. Like, no one wants to receive this. But if we were willing to get on board with this, I think we'd all be moving in the direction we want to move in. And so, perfect example, because I was talking to a friend about going to the gym. And honestly, he was saying that, like, you know, I, Lisa, have been in like grind mode, and I've been so just like committed and disciplined, and you can see it. You can see it in my body. It's different and it's visible. And so he was saying, you know, I really want to get back to the gym. And, you know, I was saying to him, like, when's the last time you went to the gym? And he was like, I don't know. It's been like years. And I was like, okay. You know, so what do you like ultimately, what do you expect from yourself? You want to go to the gym, and then how do you expect that to go? And he was like, well, you know, I could do like some of the workouts that I used to do. I used to like lift, and other people would kind of show me what to do and things like that. And he was saying how he likes going to the gym with other people because he doesn't like really feel like he knows what he's doing. And so he keeps asking me to go to the gym with him. And I was saying to him, like, well, okay, if you have never really gotten comfortable at the gym by yourself, why would you expect that you would just like wake up and go to the gym one day and feel safe and comfortable to do that? Like that's such an unrealistic expectation that you would have of yourself if you've never had that experience before. And so this is what I said to him that I've said to some other people in the past. That is, if you are someone who, again, let's use this example of wanting to go to the gym or wanting to be consistent with exercise, and you haven't been, here's what I would suggest is if your goal is like actually going to a gym rather than like, you know, walking downstairs to the treadmill that you have or something like that, you can apply this principle to literally everything. But in this example, if you are someone that wants to go to a gym, or potentially you are someone that is paying for a gym membership and not going, that what you can do is what I would recommend doing. Go to the gym, like literally just go to the gym. And I think, and this is colored, of course, by my own personal experience. When I first started working out, you know, I was over 300 pounds and I had no idea what the fuck I was doing at a gym if I wasn't with a personal trainer. What I did was, I mean, it didn't stop me. I just went every day and I got on a treadmill. You know why I got on a treadmill? Because it had one button that was green that said quick start. And it would start at like, you know, 0.05, point nothing speed wise. And then it had another button that was an up arrow and a down arrow that I could control the speed. And frankly, that is all I needed to know, because I was at a point where I was like, I don't want to let things stop me. I have a goal. I want to do what I can to work toward it. So it didn't stop me that I didn't know how to lift weights or that I didn't know how to quote unquote go to the gym. And so this is what I said to my friend was, what would it be like for you to go to a gym, locate a treadmill, because I can't imagine that there is a gym without a treadmill somewhere, generally speaking. Locate the treadmill, get on the treadmill, hit the green button, and walk. Just start there. Do that. And like, what would that be like? And of course, it's like, well, then I'm not doing enough. I feel like I should do more. I'm not going to go to the gym and just walk. But here's the thing. And listen, I completely validate that and understand that. But here's what I want to put on your radar. If you are thinking of yourself as solely a physical object or a physical being, then yeah, you're judging it by what you can see, that you're going to the gym and you're quote unquote just walking. But if you remember that you're a spiritual being having a physical experience with an animal brain in a social context, you're doing a lot more than that. You're doing a lot more than just walking, because what you're doing is you are reintroducing your mind-body system to a new environment. And for many of us, an environment that we have previous experience feeling very unsafe in. And so, yeah, maybe to you, what you're doing is walking in the door and quote unquote just walking on the treadmill. But what you're doing is rewiring your entire mind, body, soul system to understand that the treadmill is not a predator, that the gym is not life threatening, and that other people seeing you at the gym is not going to kill you. And if what you have to do is just go and literally, because this is the other thing about your nervous system, about your animal brain, it's not going to take your word for it. It's not going to trust you and believe you. Like you could say over and over again, no, really, it'll be fine if we go to the gym. Does that get rid of your fear? Like, no. Does that make you feel any less intimidated or overwhelmed or scared? No, because your brain doesn't learn by taking your word for it. It learns by experience. It has to go. It has to experience it. You have to give yourself the opportunity to learn through experience that the gym is not going to kill you, because you telling yourself over and over again, we're not going to die, we're not going to die, we're not going to die. Has that worked? I don't know. Maybe it has. Maybe it has, but very often it hasn't. And what you actually have to do is put yourself through the lived experience. Again, it's not just fake it till you make it. It is embody it until you habituate to it. Embody it. Embody the belief that you can go to the gym and do less. So that is the example of like when we consider and care for the nervous system and the physiology and the animal brain that we have to take with us, when we honor and accept that we are sensitive, energetic, intuitive beings, we can understand we're not just walking on the treadmill. We are doing a lot. We are doing a lot spiritually, energetically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physiologically, so that then we can do more. And if you are still, you're so, clinging to the paradigm of I need to do more, that's not enough, that's not good enough, I'm not good enough, all this kind of shit, it's like valid that you have that conditioning. And also, if you are always swinging the pendulum from your comfort zone to the danger zone, to the comfort zone to the danger zone, and you are wondering why you can't get anywhere, this is very often how it shows up, is because you're not willing to partner with yourself. Again, it's like it comes back to control and surrender. You can't help the fact that you have all these other parts of you that are coming to the gym with you. It doesn't matter if you invite them or not. They're coming. And so if this is the invitation, okay, if this is where you are and this is what resonates, if you can go to the gym, and this is, again, what would happen. You go to the gym, you take your fetus step of just getting on the treadmill, which, again, it's not a baby step because it doesn't require a lot of effort. It actually requires way more effort to take a baby step, because that is, again, challenging the entire way of being that you have done things. But so if you are willing to go to the gym, take your baby step, get on the treadmill, hit the green button and walk, and just let your mind orient. Literally look around the room and realize, practice some mindfulness. There is no life-threatening predator here. No one is coming after you. You are safe. Come to your senses. Find your breath. Do all of that shit while you're walking on the treadmill. You regulate your nervous system and bring in the energy of safety and the embodiment of safety into that experience. Okay, so now you're taking action to alleviate suffering. You want to start working out. You want to take care of your health. You want to maintain your body, whatever it is. You are taking action to alleviate your suffering by you taking a baby step, and you go and you do the thing. But then there's also going to be the part of you that says, I should be doing more than this. And instead of you trying to feel any different or change your beliefs or reframe your thoughts or whatever else, you get to say, I really hear that you feel like you're not doing enough. And it's okay that you feel that way. This feeling is acceptable. You are acceptable. You are loved. This feeling is welcome to be here. As I'm walking on the treadmill and I am orienting my mind-body system to the fact that I am safe here in this body at this time, in this environment, I might feel like I'm not doing enough, and that's okay. And you do that over and over and over again. You do that. Fierce self-compassion, tender self-compassion. Don't try to change your feelings. Don't try to do too much. If you can do all of that, dude, you're unstoppable. You're unstoppable. You can go anywhere. As far as I'm convinced, you can go anywhere you want to go, because now you have all of it operating together. And you're not, you're not spiritually bypassing. You're not trying to make yourself feel any type of way. You're not, resisting you're just, okay, this is what is. I can only move as far as I can move and still feel safe. I accept it. Here's my baby step. And I have all these feelings that are going to come with me along the way that I have to feel. Okay, so I accept that. And this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. So there's so much more to say about it. But like I said, we made it here. We made it here to the actual integration and the embodiment of masculine, feminine, tenderness and fierceness, taking action, being acceptance. This is it. This is it. And so whether it's around food and eating and weight and other stuff or whatever it is for you, again, because it's all the same, whether you're working on your behaviors with alcohol, drugs, shopping, money, spending, scrolling, people-pleasing, whatever it is, this is the framework that you can use. It is a combination of the outer change and the inner healing. And then, like I said, you get to go where you want to go. You get to make your life what you want to make it. And the beginning, clearly, is coming back to yourself. Coming back to yourself and releasing all of the shackles of the conditioning that is keeping us in a state of disconnection. So that is what I came here to say today. That's why I was so excited, because from here, now I get to tell you a little bit more in detail and in depth about the most recent intentional weight loss and how, ultimately, I think I said this to someone the other day, like I am currently in the thinnest, leanest, lightest body, but also the strongest and the fastest and the healthiest. I feel so good. And the last, the whole year essentially of this intentional weight loss, this is what it's looked like, is baby steps. But knowing what I know about how to do the outer change and the inner work at the same time is why I am where I am. And so I want to just continue to kind of like break it down and give you all these examples of what it looks like so you can practice this in your own real life. So that is chapter 8. That is it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. As always, I really hope you enjoyed it and it resonated. Please let me know, lisaschlossberg@gmail.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to the pod if you haven't yet. Please, please, please. And that's it. As always, I hope you have the best week ever, and I will be back with you next week.